Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Newsam's Night TV studio and another edition of Inside Media. I'm your host, John Maynard. We are less than 3 weeks away from the spectacle that is the Summer Olympic Games, which kick off in London on Friday, July 27th. For 17 days, much of the world will be watching as more than 10,000 athletes from over 200 countries go for the gold. So, can we expect drama this summer? What will be the big story, and who will we still be talking about when it's all over? Well, we think we have the right person to talk all things Olympics today. Christine Brennan is an award-winning sports columnist for USA Today, who has covered 14 consecutive Olympic Games, both summer and winter. This will be her 15th. And I think we're going to find out today which game she likes better, winter or summer. But along with her column, Christine is also a commentator on ABC News, CNN, and NPR, and has twice been named one of the country's top 10 sports columnists by the Associated Press sports editors. Christine was the first woman sports writer at the Miami Herald, and the first woman to cover our beloved Washington Redskins as a staff writer at the Washington Post in 1985. She is also the author of 7 books, including her memoir, Best Seat in the House, and the national bestseller, Inside Edge, which was named one of the top 100 sports books of all time by Sports Illustrated. Please help me welcome Christine Brennan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christine, before we get to the Olympics, a quick question about Wimbledon. I'm not sure if you all saw the match this morning, but I think Andrew Murray had the ultimate home court advantage, yes. But he just couldn't get past Roger Federer. I was kind of hoping to see Murray take it. How about yourself?
I think so.
Yeah.
For those of you, did anyone get a chance to see any of Wimbledon? Or have you been, a little bit? It went on and on and on forever, didn't it?
I
actually was at my niece's swim meet, 8-year-old niece's swim meet, but I was keeping track, as don't we all these days, Twitter and,
right.
and updates and what have you, and I made it home in time to watch the end, which I did not anticipate I would,
right.
Because it did go on forever. But Federer certainly showed, Roger Federer, what the champion he is, and how he was able to come back after all these years, months and months of not winning a Grand Slam tournament, and really, kind of set his flag back in the turf that he's got if maybe this is the last one or maybe a couple more in him, which is tremendous as he's approaching 31 years old. For Andy Murray, a British man has not won Wimbledon in 76 years. Wow. That's a lot of pressure on one tennis player, isn't it, from one country? And if you didn't see the interview afterwards, definitely go back and find that when you get home tonight or to your hotels or wherever. He breaks down time and time again. Wow. Tears in his eyes, can't go on, has to crouch down for a while before he can gather himself to speak. And when we talk about sports, and we often talk about everything that's wrong in sports, don't we? And I, his columns, the columns I write for USA Today, as you know, John, there are many, many issues out there that are not happy news and bad stories in sports. We've had a couple of years of particularly bad stories, very depressing news out of sports. And then you see that. You see this young man that's just completely overcome, and what it means to him, and everyone now has tears in their eyes as they're listening to him in center court. It was something. And, bravo to him for making it all the way to the finals. As Roger Federer, I think, said it best, he said, I wish for you at least one Grand Slam final and one Grand Slam title. So I think everyone in tennis will be rooting for Andy Murray in the future, but unfortunately for him today, it was just not quite enough.
Right, right. Well, let's get to the Olympics, and I want to open with a recent quote from a piece in The New Yorker. I'm not sure if you saw this, but the quote is, "We are about to enter that period which occurs every 4 years when Americans become passionate about athletes we never heard of, participating in games we do not follow, trying to please judges we cannot see, according to rules we do not know." So it's probably a bit cynical take on the Olympics, but we do tune in. And why do we continue to watch the Olympics and get psyched up for it every 4 years, every 2 years with the Winter Olympics?
Right, exactly. Great question, and I think that is exactly it. I've kind of said it over the years a different way, John, which is that for 2 weeks and a couple days, every 2 years now, winter and summer, but if you take a summer athlete, every 4 years for that summer athlete, they drop into our lives for those 16 days, and then they're gone. And often they never come back again. I mean, for every Michael Phelps or Michelle Kwan or Dara Torres, there are people who they're one and done. And the gymnasts in particular, and we saw that, how tough it is to repeat. Nastia Liukin, the gold medalist 4 years ago, falls flat on her face last Sunday night, handled it beautifully with class and grace and dignity, but no second Olympics for her. these athletes never overstay their welcome. Think about how sick and tired we are of some professional athletes. You can shout out names later if you'd like. But, you know, I think we could make a laundry list, couldn't we? I'm done with that guy. I've had it with her. You know, whatever. Just the antics, the nonsense, the contract dispute, whatever it is. And we know individual stories. Each one would be, you could argue pro or con. But in general, right, we've had it. Lockouts, everything just drives you nuts. These people, these Olympic athletes, never drive us nuts because they're gone. You know, you're turning on the TV on the next day. It's like, oh, they're not there anymore. They're gone. And I think that makes it so appealing for so many people. For me, growing up in the suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, I would cry when the Olympics ended as a teenager. And my siblings would tease me. My mom said, let her cry, you know, let her have tears. This would be like the '76 Olympics in Montreal. And if anyone had ever told me, you know, a little fairy lands on my shoulder and says, you know, go to college, and then when you're finished, you'll start your career, and you'll go to the Los Angeles Olympics in '84, and you'll never miss another Olympics, at least so far, knock on wood. I would never have believed that, because the Olympics dropped into my life, and where it was almost like being at camp or being with your best friends or something on a great vacation, and then it's over. So I think that's really the appeal. And also, I know there's so many things for all of us. I'm sure many of you are sports fans. Can you trust it? Can you not? You know, I'm sick and tired of the antics, who's cheating, who's not. The Olympics are our best bet. I'm not saying that there won't be cheaters in London. Of course there will. Steroids, drugs we haven't heard of. The bad chemists are way ahead of the good chemists. So that's why you can be cheating and get away on drug tests, as certainly Marion Jones did, pass many drug tests and be cheating the whole time. So, you know, you wonder, right? And you say, okay, but the Olympics has the toughest drug testing in the world. So if you want to rely on anything, rely on the Olympic Games, much more than baseball or football or anything like that. The athletes, by and large, are doing it for the right reasons. Again, are there, you know, jerks at the Olympics? Of course there are. But per capita, there are far fewer than we see in some other sports. And again, I'm not trying to denigrate other sports, but I think this is all the reason why we gravitate. We say someone who is an Olympian, that means something still. If you meet someone who's got an Olympic medal, wow, right? It's just the coolest thing. There are parades. There will be parades in small towns around this country and around the world when these athletes come home with their medals in another month or 6 weeks. That means something. And I really, it sounds a little hokey, but I really do believe it. Again, lots of problems in the Olympics. I'm not sugarcoating it for a second. A lot of issues internationally, a lot of issues with the governing bodies and what have you. But in terms of what you can trust and rely on, other than maybe the college sports, women's sports, and men's, not men's basketball or men's football, but the other kind of minor sports, you'd call them Olympic sports for men. Other than that, I think that college level athlete is very much like the Olympics, and by and large, again, doing it for the right reasons and very much worthy of your applause.
One of your most recent columns, and speaking of inspiring stories, was about the South African runner, Oscar Pistorius, am I pronouncing that correctly? Tell us about him and how he will make Olympic history this summer.
This one is really going to be something. You're going to want to watch this, the men's 400 meter individual track and field race, and then the 4x400 relay race. It'll be August, I think, 4th, and then even a little bit later in the games. And Oscar, the Blade Runner as he's known, Oscar Pistorius from South Africa, is the man with double amputee. He was born without fibulas, and so at the age of 11 months, he had both legs amputated just below the knee as just a little baby. And obviously they fitted him with these devices, and you've seen pictures, I'm sure. If you haven't, definitely Google him and look at what it looks like, because it's extraordinary. These J-shaped cheetah legs, as he calls them. And so that hence the nickname, the Blade Runner. And there are people, it's a great question, and it's kind of a question for our times. It's not even just an Olympic question, it's a question of science and medicine and technology and where we're going as a society with fair sports and fair competition. Because there are people who say that's not fair. That because he's got these carbon fiber legs, that he can run faster than he would have otherwise. Now, we don't know that because, as I said, before he was 1 year old, he had those legs amputated. So a tragedy turned into something beautiful and inspiring, and that's the way I look at it. My column the other day, I think this is great. He said it's just a wonderful day for him. Well, I thought it was a wonderful day for the Olympic Games when South Africa decided to send him for these two events. But there will be controversy, and there will be people who say that's not fair. My point back, it's not like he's going to win the gold medal. He is a very good athlete. He's a very fast runner. And in some ways, those of you who follow golf, you remember the story a few weeks ago at the U.S. Open of Casey Martin, the man with the bad leg. He, of course, was also he played in the PGA Tour for a year or two. And he has a terrible, walk. He can't really walk, so he uses a golf cart. Right. And there were people who said that was unfair. You can't use a golf cart and be on the PGA Tour. You can't use a golf cart and be in the U.S. Open. Well, he proved them wrong, and he won a battle all the way to the Supreme Court to win that. That's Casey Martin several years ago. Well, for those who are saying this is going to open the floodgates, which is really the key issue, is this going to be a precedent setter where everyone's going to want to come in and use all these devices, whether it's Oscar with his legs, whether it's Casey Martin with a golf cart? I tend to be very realistic and practical on these things and say, okay, well, let's look at what's happened. Has there been any other golfer who is that good to qualify for the U.S. Open or to qualify for the PGA Tour who also has a bad leg and needs a golf cart? And there have been literally this many people, 0, since Casey Martin. Oscar has been on the world stage since '04, really, in the Paralympic Games. He's a star in the '04 and the '08 Paralympic Games. And so he's been around for 8 years. And have we seen people with rockets on their feet trying to enter the Olympic Games? No. He is, this year, his best time in the 400 individual race, the 400 meters, is there have been 56 times faster than his. So it's not as if he is cheating or blowing by everybody, making a mockery of a race, which would be things I think would be very concerned about. His best time ever is in the 2000s worldwide all time in the 400 meters. So yes, he took a spot that might have otherwise gone to an able-bodied South African runner. That was the choice of the South African Olympic Committee. I personally think it's a great choice because the message that he is sending, and that Olympic Committee, when he runs, think of all of those people who have issues, whether they have various abilities, disabled, whatever the proper terminology is, and they will watch this man run, and they will feel different about themselves the next day, and I think that's great.
That's a name that we'll certainly be talking about in the next month or so. Are there any other names out there right now that we might not know about that we could be talking about during the games or even after the games?
Yeah, well, I think that the answer is yes because of the surprises of the Olympics, and that's kind of one of the neat things that we'll be covering things. Those of us veterans, we feel like we know it all, and there'll be a name that just pops out of the blue, and it would be just fantastic. Certainly, from the United States point of view, of course, for swimming, I'm sure you're all well aware of this incredible battle that's going to loom between Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte, and that'll be the first night of swimming, which will be the 28th, Saturday night. So, set your DVRs for that in the 400 IM, and that's when they'll first meet, and that's the one where Lochte beat him just a couple weeks ago in Omaha. I was there to cover that. And so certainly, Ryan Lochte is not a name that we know like Michael Phelps. Lochte could be a huge star in these Olympics. Phelps still wants to beat him, so this back and forth is it's going to be tremendous. Another name from the pool, an American young woman, Missy Franklin. And again, if you follow the Olympic swimming trials, that's not a secret already. She's a huge name. She will be in 7 events in the Olympics in swimming. First American woman and swimmer to ever make qualify for 7 events, 3 relays and 4 individual events. 7 gold medals, probably unlikely, but 4 or 5, you never know. She's a rising senior in high school in Denver. And what I love about her is everything she says, she adds, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how many times when she was going through the mix zone, which is how we interview these athletes, they come off the pool deck, come down the stairs, we come down the stairs from a different way, and then we meet there, and they're still soaking wet, they've still got their caps on, they're still breathing heavily often, and they're coming down, and so we catch them. Missy Franklin, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much. I mean, you have to say, wow, this kid is just great. And the really neat thing could change, but right now her family, she's an only child, and her mom and dad, and she have decided they do not want her to make a dime. So there's no agent. Wow. And it's just, she wants to be able to go to college and swim on a college team. And for those of you who know the amateur rules or the Olympic rules, amateur isn't quite the right word, for a lot of these athletes now. There are stipends and what have you. But if you are a professional in that sport, you then cannot compete in the NCAA in that sport. So if Missy Franklin were to make money off of these Olympics, which she could probably already have made millions of dollars, but certainly after the Olympics as well, then she could not swim for a college team when she goes to college. So right now she's saying, I want to swim on a team, I love being on a team, and I don't want to take any money. Let's watch that. But I feel good that and who can blame her, right? I mean, you know, this is your one shot, or it could be your one shot, although she's talking about several Olympics, but you never know, injury, what have you. So, she's one to watch. Certainly the gymnastics battle between the US and China. You may remember 4 years ago, the Chinese had unfortunately abused their women athletes. They took younger athletes than they should have, changed their birth dates. As we were watching on the website, the numbers would literally change. You'd go and then you'd look an hour later and the birth dates had changed. And I say they abused them because it's not the girls' fault. It's the Chinese officials to cheat, to win that gold medal in their home Olympics in Beijing against the United States. And I'd say this if the U.S. wasn't second, if Romania had been second, who cares? It's that the Chinese were cheating. This is not about the U.S. in this case. And you know, they said the girls had to be 16. They looked like they were 14. They were probably 12. And why? Well, of course, gymnastics. The younger, the smaller, the more nimble, the better. You fly through the air. So the older body, bigger body, and when I say bigger, I mean they're still tiny and they're in beautiful shape, but that it's easier to win and do better when you're tiny. So the Chinese cheated that way. Everyone knows it, got away with it, and that battle between the U.S. and China, Gabby Douglas for the U.S., Jordan Weber are the two big stars. Those are names that are new from 4 years ago. Watch for that when the U.S. and China go at it in the women's team competition. I think the U.S. team really wants to even that score from 4 years ago.
So tell us about your process of covering the Olympics. I mean, there's so much going on, obviously, on any given day. You're a columnist now, so that's different than being a beat reporter. But how do you decide which events to cover, and how do you go about doing it?
It's a good question. There are some days I wake up in the morning and, okay, where am I going to go? And there's emails and there's conversations, of course, with editors. I'll have my iPhone and I will activate it and pay the exorbitant cost of all the emails and texts and whatever, because I just feel I have to have a U.S. phone number while I'm overseas, whatever Olympics I'm at. But then USA Today will give me in fact, some kind of smartphone I think they're going to give us this time. So I'll have 2 cell phones going. And there was a time at the Salt Lake City Olympics, just as an aside, I was able to break the pairs figure skating scandal story at the Salt Lake Olympics. Remember that? The French judge crying in the lobby, the fix was in against the Canadians, and we were off and running on just another wild figure skating story. Shocking figure skating. Tanya Nancy, and then that, you know, it's just figure skating is the gift that keeps on giving for reporters. I'm not so sure if it's good for the competitors, but it's great for us. And at one point I was walking down a Salt Lake City street. You know, I'd had 2 hours sleep because I was getting up for Good Morning America, and no complaints. I mean, this is my dream come true. I appreciate every second of all this. But getting up, Robin Roberts and I are on a rooftop in cold old Salt Lake City at 5 in the morning for 7 a.m. New York time, 5 a.m. Salt Lake time. And, you know, getting a couple hours sleep and then going through these long days. And I've got both cell phones to my ear, and I'm doing 2 different interviews at the same time. And I had to laugh because, you know, that's kind of madcap, slapstick, you know, humor you see sometimes in a movie or something. Well, it happened to me. So I'm sure there will be moments in London where I've got both cell phones going, and probably an iPad as well or something. But with USA Today, there's a whole new leadership in sports at USA Today, big changes there. And so I'm sure we'll just, I'm guessing it'll be similar to what we've done in the past, which we'll talk this week probably and start to plan it out. We do have the schedule. It's available anywhere, obviously, for you as well, for organizing and planning your summer nights of watching and what you want to see. And just start to go over things and say, okay, maybe, you know, swimming here, because swimming's the first week, and track and field's the second week, is basically how it goes. There's usually 1 day of overlap between swimming and track and field. Swimming's huge for the United States, of course, all the medals, all the U.S. prospects. And then gymnastics will be that women's competition. I'm hoping to be certainly at that day. And then, unlike some Olympics, Vancouver, you could literally run, you know, a couple blocks, and you could, you know, quickly hop in a cab and get to a venue. Things were pretty easy to get to in Vancouver. In Beijing, it was as terrible as the human rights violations were and still are in China, and dissidents being thrown in jail because the Olympics were given to China. Reprehensible. and I will never forget that, and I will write about that and talk about that even when we're in London. What China did to make all of us think it was this beautiful picture when it was hardly the case. But their organization was impeccable. So I could wake up, I was on the 9th floor of a hotel in the main press center. So if I wanted to make it to the main press center, I could make it in as quickly as the elevator could take me from the 9th floor to the lobby. That's about as close as I've ever been from my hotel room or my arrangements, sleeping arrangements, to the main press center. Right. And then from that point, I could walk to swimming, gymnastics, track and field. I could leave swimming and be at gymnastics within 7 or 8 minutes at Beijing. That's how close those, you might remember the water cube and the bird's nest and how that all worked out. London, complete opposite, John. Oh my goodness. You are going to have a day trip to get to the venue, and then you're going to be ensconced in the venue. Wow. So if I'm at gymnastics and an editor, or I decide, hey, I want to get over to swimming, or vice versa, I'm at swimming, I want to get to gymnastics, that could take 4 hours as opposed to 7 or 8 minutes. So it's going to be much more, got to commit and know what we want to do as a story, knowing, by the way, that TV monitors are in all the venues. So let's say the most amazing thing happens in gymnastics while I'm at swimming, I could still fire off a quick little mini column or something on gymnastics even as I'm at swimming. Not because I'd want to do that, but because the traffic, the buses, the tubes, however I would go, London is a beautiful city, but it's massive, and it's just going to be probably gridlock in all ways with traffic and the tube and the underground. So you'll kind of, we'll be doing a lot of, three-ring circus kind of reporting to get all that taken care of. But nonetheless, no complaints, but it's going to be different than these other Olympics.
Is there any one sport you enjoy covering more than another, just in terms of, as a fan?
Yeah, I think swimming.
Swimming,
yeah. I think, because off the bat, or right off the bat, the first day, there's going to be probably 4 events, maybe for sure 4 individual events, 4 gold medals, 4 national anthems. So you are in the Olympics. I never get tired. At the opening ceremonies, I've been to every one. I'm certainly planning to go. I haven't talked to my editors, but if I had to buy a ticket, I'll buy a ticket to not break my streak. And I get teary-eyed, even as I've been as critical of the IOC as anyone on the planet. Very few national columnists really sink their teeth into the Olympics, but I'm very happy to do that, of course, and enjoy writing about those issues. And incredibly critical about softball. You know, IOC is trying to increase women's participation, but then gets rid of softball. Terrible decision. How they've never honored the memory of the 11 Israeli coaches and athletes who died in Munich in 1972, 40 years ago, September 5th, 1972. And so I've been very critical of the IOC. So even as I'm doing that as a journalist, the human being in me gets tears in my eyes at the opening ceremonies. And then that next day, you're at the swimming venue, if you are there, and there's races, and there's gold medals, and there's anthems. And if it's the US, that's terrific. If it's another country, that's terrific. You're in the moment. And, for example, if you're covering basketball, which I never do, men's or women's at the Olympics, because to me, the Olympic sports are the ones you don't see. Basketball we see all the time. Tennis we see all the time, so I won't ever cover tennis. No offense, I love the game of tennis. It's just I don't need to be at the Olympic tennis when there's these other things. But if you cover basketball, you're covering a game and another game, and there's no gold medal till the very end. There's no medal ceremony till the very end. So same with track and field. It's just bushel baskets full of medals those days, and it's very cool.
We do want to get to questions, and we have one staffer here with a microphone. So if you do have a question, you could raise your hand, and she'll come to you. And we'll start over there on the far right. If you, while you're getting over there, I'll ask you. You mentioned the opening ceremonies that you hope to get there on Friday, the 27th. How about those opening ceremonies 4 years ago in Beijing? Can anyone ever top that spectacle?
Great question. Yeah. No, they can't, and they shouldn't even try. You guys, did many of you see the opening ceremonies? I was sitting there, and again, I'm so honored to be there, but I have to tell you, the weather out here these last few days, are many of you visitors to DC?
So, visiting, okay.
Yeah, sorry, did we get it hot enough for you? Can you believe this? Well, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that it was hotter that night. It was 8/8/08 at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. 8 is the magical number in China. So it was August 8th of 2008. It was so hot that at midnight, I don't think I've ever been warmer at midnight. We're finishing up the opening, writing our stories, whatever, right outside, right at the finish line. They take some seats and put tables in and internet and everything, TV monitors. I mean, we are set up. And it's a wonderful way to report while we're right there in the midst of it all. Anyway, I remember like taking my hand over my, and it was just like this kind of grime of perspiration and dirt, and because of the pollution in the air in Beijing. Amazing, over $100 million they spent on it, but a girl was paralyzed doing it. Remember, they finally came out, they admitted that. They had the one girl lip syncing, and I don't mean to be throwing wet water, or, cold water on this thing, except we should. As a free society, we absolutely should. I mean, at what cost did they give us that show? And I would much rather have a society like London, like England or ours, an open, free, democratic society where people can argue and be on a street corner and say, we shouldn't be spending this much money because we should be spending more money on schools, which would be the conversation in every city in America, right? Or that we're going to we don't have dissidents in jail because we are but we're going to have clogged streets and traffic jams and protests. And so London, I've talked to Sebastian Coe is the great runner, gold medalist, who is now in charge of the London Games, and he said he talked to his people the next day and he said, forget about it. Yeah. Whatever Beijing just did, this was 4 years ago now, forget about it, we'll do our own thing. And of course, with their music, they should just have a concert, right? With all the great music from England and Great Britain, and they'll do fine. But again, I don't mean to kind of beat a dead horse, but I do think it's important as we glorify and talk about how great China was. It was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. That most of the Olympic sites, Sydney, Atlanta, had big TV screens. You know how that feeling in the city, in the square, where then people can gather and watch if they don't go to if they don't have tickets. Well, Beijing had a big TV screen too, right by the train station downtown. And as soon as the opening ceremonies were about to begin, people had gathered, authorities, police, whatever, came along and unplugged all the TV sets and ordered everyone home. That was Beijing. I guarantee in London it's going to look like a party, as it should, with warts and all. And I think that we should glorify and be thrilled with that.
Question right there.
I'm delighted to hear you like swimming as much as I do. One of my pet peeves over the years is that you don't hear anything about swimming in the national media until the Olympics. Even in the Olympics years, the NC2As are not covered, even though, unlike this year where none of the college swimmers who are big names are participating. It's Lochte, Phelps, Franklin, none of them are in the NC2As this year. But anyway, the point is, why don't they cover swimming in other years? And I'm sure it's the same for other sports that are so big in Olympic years, like gymnastics.
Yeah, gymnastics gets some coverage. Figure skating always was the one that had the most coverage because, you see the nationals and the world championships because figure skating got the TV ratings. And I hate to give you an answer that you and I both hate because I wish things were being done for the right reasons. But it is about TV ratings. And the reality is that if it were great TV ratings, it would be on TV all the time. That said, I know NBC, and I don't work with NBC, but I will praise them nonetheless. They did show those Shanghai World Championships, I believe. They were showing a lot of that live. I think they also showed the 2009 World Championships, if I recall, kind of coming off the Phelps bubble of 2008. And so you did see the World Championships in swimming on TV, which I don't ever remember seeing those. Maybe Wide World of Sports when we were all kids and when most of you guys weren't born. you ask your grandparents about Wide World of Sports. It really was groundbreaking. Yeah. Don't you feel that way?
The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, and the Polish ski jumper still is falling off the mountain. And that's, by the way, everyone, I forget his name, but it's well known, and he's become a star. Anytime they trot him out, is the agony of defeat. So other than that, right, where they'd show these things on the Wide World of Sports, then for years this wasn't on. You'll see like women's soccer, the NCAA final will be on ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPNU, but I agree with you. And they were talking about an Olympic TV network, and you got to think, right, there's the tennis network, the golf network, my goodness, we probably have the poker network. I mean, why wouldn't we have, a swimming network and or an Olympic network? And there's been conversation about that. It hasn't gone anywhere so far, but I've got to believe in the next few years you'll be able to watch as much swimming as you want right here on your phone. And I think it's just going to be maybe more on demand. You'd have to pay for it. Webcasting of things, that's clearly where we are there, and it's going to be more of that. But it's a great question. I guess just the only last little positive thought, it does lead to the reason we love it so much because we don't see it except every 4 years. So that's that wonderful allure of it, even as it infuriates a fan like you. And I certainly I certainly hear that. But you could call ESPN and say, why aren't you showing more of this? I guess if every swimming fan, everyone who swims competitively, calls ESPN or bombards people with emails and phone calls, you'd probably get it on the air. It doesn't take that many emails or phone calls to let people know that you're out there. But good question, and enjoy the swimming from London.
Up in the middle there, sir.
What's the process of some sports becoming Olympic and some not? For example, like ping pong becoming a sport versus like squash, which is not currently an Olympic sport.
Yeah, it's really as haphazard as you could imagine. Whatever your worst nightmare would be of the process, that's it. Remember a few years ago they were talking about ballroom dancing becoming an Olympic sport. I got to tell you, I love the Olympics. I would maybe have had to say, if that's the Olympics, I'm not so sure I would be covering that. But it's really, well, each sport is, as many of you know, and if you play sports, there's international federations for each sport. And sometimes these international federation presidents or their boards, a member or two could be on the IOC, or they know each other. They all travel all these meetings together. Then there's individual geographic meetings as well. So that's how they get to know each other and hobnob and eventually start to lobby for these things. As you probably know, back in '05, that's when softball and baseball were voted out of the Olympics. Baseball, and this, by the way, I tend to think it's not anti-American, even though it may well be, because the International Olympic Committee loves the U.S. corporate dollars, loves the TV audience, but doesn't necessarily love us. And I know that's not shocking to hear that the United States is not beloved by everybody. We deal with that all the time in politics, of course, and that's not my area of expertise. But the International Olympic Committee, I don't think they were really hammering the U.S. on that baseball, softball as much as they were with baseball. Of course, you didn't have the tough drug testing. You still don't in baseball. It's better, but it's not Olympic style. So you could have cheaters. You also didn't get even more important, you wouldn't have the best athletes, because baseball, unlike hockey, will not stop its season to send the baseball players to the Olympics. Juan Antonio Samaranch, the former president of the IOC, wanted the best athletes. That's why the Dream Team popped up in '92. That's why tennis is in the Olympics. He said, I want the best athletes in the sport to be in the Olympics. Personally, I kind of liked it when there were amateurs, even though there are no amateurs anymore, but that hint of a college team beating the Soviets, like the Miracle on Ice in 1980 in hockey. Those moments are so great that you kind of hope for that. Anyway, that's why baseball and then softball, they got confused and voted out softball because they thought it was baseball because they're all Europeans and they don't know the difference. And I know you're saying, I know at this point you're saying she made that up. I wish I made that up, folks. That really is how the IOC, they got confused, they were so embarrassed and they had to revote the next day. And answering your question with this anecdote, how do they make these decisions? I mean, somebody falls asleep and doesn't vote and then it's a one vote difference. I mean, now you're saying for sure she's making it up. I am not. And that's why, while we love the Olympics, we can't, the last amateurs left in the Olympic world are the people running the sports. And, and I've used that line. You'll read that in a week or two. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to use it again. Every few years I use it and an editor goes, that's a great line. And I'm like, they forgot. Good.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So don't, this webcast, pay no attention. Just it'll be all new. But all joking aside, I mean, these are athletes who are spending their whole lives hoping to be in the Olympics, as you know. And, rugby now is in. And golf is in. And I love covering golf. Just covered the U.S. Open, Men's Open in San Francisco. I love the sport of golf. Do we really need golf in the Olympics? We've got the Ryder Cup, the President's Cup, the Solheim Cup. We're going to give them another international competition versus softball, which, again, woman-only sport where we're trying to get up. It's 58. This Olympics will be about 58% male, 42% female participation. Jacques Rogge, the new IOC, not new, but the relatively new IOC president, said he wants to be 50-50. So you get rid of a woman's-only sport? I mean, this is how dumb this is. And so, but you bring in golf, men and women, but that's not going to help you get to your 58-42 to get it closer. So it's I hate to say it, but it's who you know. It sounds a little bit like your high school popularity contest for voting for student council president, and who lobbies the best. I wish it was based on just the quality of the sport. And you might say, well, softball in the United States, we've got ESPN covering all the the NCAA softball. But this was about African nations starting softball for girls to empower these young girls who have nothing else. And all those programs, once they got rid of this idiotic revote and they didn't know what they were voting on and they blew it, those programs dried up. And that's a shame. And those girls were left high and dry with a new sport in those African nations because now they're not in the Olympics, so now they took the money out of it. So there is while we laugh, and I, of course, am laughing with you, there are very serious issues that involve these decisions. Is there a particular sport that you're wondering about for the Olympics?
Squash.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you asked about squash.
Squash.
Yeah, they were part of the vote the last time and didn't make it with golf and rugby. I'm sure they'll come back again. They're going to talk about getting, probably I think 2 more sports, I believe is what they're talking about for 2020 or 2024 Summer Games. And usually you need to be kind of around for a few years before lobbying, and talking to people before you get a chance. I wouldn't be surprised to see it sometime in the 20s in the Olympic Games.
Young lady up there?
So just as football, baseball, and basketball overshadow sports like gymnastics, track, and swimming in sort of the regular sports coverage, I think so do gymnastics, track, and swimming overshadow other Olympic sports in Olympic sports coverage. So I was wondering what sports you think are the most undercovered or underappreciated at the Games.
That's a really good question. And here I did it too, didn't I, by giving you like the names to watch in those big sports. And the Olympic trials are the ones I went to swimming, that kind of thing. There's rowing trials, of course. There's, oh my goodness, there's modern pentathlon, there's shooting, there's archery, there's equestrian events that are beautiful and fascinating. And on and on and on it goes. Diving, which was a huge sport for those that remember the days of Greg Louganis. We all covered every part of the diving when Louganis, the world's greatest diver ever, was competing in the 80s. And now we'll pay attention to it, but it's nowhere near as big a deal, even though there are terrific divers around the world, Chinese divers, US, et cetera. So I think the positive is that they do have their moment now in the sun in these Olympic Games. Like many of the sports that we were talking about, then they just kind of go away, and then the fans who love it will watch it. Those people who participate, I'm thinking again of rowing, the NCAA championships will be attended by people and fans, and then they're gone. I don't know that the mainstream sports media is ever going to latch on to some of these other sports and make them huge. Clearly NBC, or the network that's televising the Olympics, right now it's NBC, that they make it big. And believe it or not, there was a time when gymnastics was not a big deal. And then at the 72 Olympics, a little Russian gymnast, Soviet gymnast named Olga Korbut, and the nation fell in love with it, and all of a sudden we became lovers of gymnastics. So it's got to have some things. Any sport, I think many of you probably, if you love lacrosse and your kids play lacrosse, you think, well, when is that going to break through and be bigger than soccer? Which I think it actually could in the United States in the next 50 to 75 years. I don't know, but I think we're a throwing nation first, right? We're not a kicking nation. So lacrosse, I think I think that's why lacrosse is really catching hold, whatever. But a lot of these sports, with the way we kind of, pigeonhole things, the mainstream sports media were probably, other than that new breakout star, if something extraordinary happens in modern pentathlon and shooting and archery and rowing, if there were a 12-year-old in archery, I don't even know if they could have a 12-year-old in archery, but you almost, and this is, I'm being critical of us in answering your question, there almost has to be some kind of gimmick or shtick or Olga Korbut jumping, landing in our lives, landing in our laps to wake us up out of our kind of already pro forma swimming, gymnastics, track and field. Now, having said that, again, it's about TV ratings, it's about interest, and now for the print side of things, or the website, as you know, John, so well, it's about hits, it's about eyeballs, and they can judge what people are reading. It would be really cool if rowing and other sports, I'm just picking these out, take rowing and have that be the example for any other sport we're talking about. It would be great if the hits would go through the roof if I wrote about it in a couple of weeks. I'm guessing that it wouldn't the way the Phelps-Lochte race would be. So that's why we focus on that stuff. Did I answer your question? It's not a happy answer though. I know we are infuriating what we do and how we do it. The good news on NBC, and again, I'm a competitor, but happy to, they're going to be showing everything now streaming live. So it's not like you have to wait like Ozzie and Harriet, 8 to 11, like the 1950s. Okay, good. You can you'll get the result. I mean, I'll be tweeting like crazy at C. Brennan Sports. We will be giving you everything and pictures and whatever as it's happening. But NBC now will be showing you live streaming. I don't know if you have to pay for that or whatever. But if you care about some other sports, you'll be able to find those sports in a way you wouldn't have been able to do when they were packaging it beautifully from 8 to 11 on a Thursday night.
I think we have time for just a few more questions, but I think Christine will be very willing to stick around
Absolutely.
afterwards once
Come on up, we can
turn the
talk
cameras
more.
off. But
For
we're going to go right up there.
Ms. Brennan, thank you for sharing your experiences of the Olympics with us. It's exciting. My question, what special memories do you have of the '96 Summer Olympics in Atlanta?
Were you in Atlanta?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Were you involved?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you involved?
My daughter and I were at the Olympics at the soccer final in Athens.
Huge. That will be studied 100 years from now by historians and students because that was Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain and Julie Foudy and that team, Michelle Akers, winning the gold medal, but selling out an American football stadium, of course, University of Georgia, between the hedges, and that led then to the notion that they felt in the '99 Women's World Cup they could sell out these big stadiums. And they did, and that really was Title IX personified, and how much the nation was falling in love with what we created, these female athletes, and the girls next door, and your daughters, the girl you see in the kitchen every morning, and your granddaughters, what have you. For me, Atlanta was, again, a lot of swimming, a lot of track and field, Jackie Joyner-Kersee and Carl Lewis, their last real great efforts. The bomb, of course, which was tragic, but a big part of Olympic stories, and that London, too, keep your fingers crossed, my goodness, knock on wood, that there's no violence, no terrorism, but that's an issue in the Olympics, certainly. But the happy thoughts of the city coming together and just the great, Michael Johnson in the 200 meters, the 400 meters, 200, I believe, 1932, I think was his time, ending at what is now third base in the Brave Stadium, right? And that's where the finish line was, basically at third base. So a lot of great memories within the venues, and those hopefully will be the things that kind of supersede the tragic stories that, of course, occasionally come out of the Olympics. Thanks for the question.
We're going to have 2 more questions here, and then we'll go to the man in the front here. Go ahead.
I just want to know, when you were younger, what made you want to become a sports newser, caster? It's
a great question, and I grew up at a time as Title IX was just starting. I grew up in the 60s and early 70s playing sports, and I had my own personal Title IX before Richard Nixon signed the law. 40th anniversary, of course, was just celebrated June 23rd. I had my own personal Title IX. I had my dad. And at a time when girls were being told, no, you cannot play sports, can you imagine? Literally telling a nation of girls, you cannot do this. Or if you can play tennis, but don't play rough and tumble with the boys. You couldn't go full court in basketball because, who knows if you could ever have a baby. Can you believe that? That's what this nation was telling 51% of our population for generations. I had my dad and my mom, too, telling me, yes, honey, play sports. I'm tall. I'm 6 feet tall, basically 5'11 and a half. So I could play every sport, and the sports welcomed me. But I had my dad and my mom, who were rock rib Republicans and the biggest feminists I knew. So I learned early on to take stereotypes and throw them out the window. And I couldn't wait till my dad would get home from work and we could throw the baseball in the front yard. And then we'd go to games, and I learned how to throw the ball properly, throw like a girl. By the way, can we retire that word? Because it means now you throw the ball well, you throw it right. But back then there was that throw like a girl thing. Well, I fired it. My dad taught me right. So sports welcomed me. My mom and dad were all part of this. We had season tickets for Toledo Mud Hens, Detroit Tigers, Michigan football, and I just kept playing sports. I was the senior athlete of the year in my high school. Once I could play in high school. Before high school, there were no organized teams for girls, not a one. And so that was just a different time. But I had a dream, and then I loved journalism. I loved writing. I kept a diary every day, starting at the age of 10 or 11. And so then at that point, it just seemed like sports, my love of writing and journalism, newspapers, the news, and I put it together, and I've been doing this now for 31 years. Wow. I love it more today than the day I started. Thank you, and good luck to you.
Final question right here in front.
Just wanted to get your thoughts on your memories on Rulon Gardner when he upset Alexander Karelin. Also had a question about China. I know after the Olympics they made a major commitment to pouring money into swimming and track to see if they could gain more medals as a way to win the overall as well as the most golds in the Olympics. How do you see that developing in London?
Rulon Gardner is one of those names that you were asking me about, you know, that kind of
Right,
surprise
yeah.
out of the blue. And we've had those in wrestling every now and then, and they're terrific. I was not there that day, but it's one of those things, you're at another venue and you start getting word, turn on the TV or check the monitors or check your email, and you get these incredible stories. So, you know, I've met him a few times. I really, you know, I'm not an expert on him, but just a great, you know, story, obviously, and inspiring. And that's really what the Olympics is. I kind of haven't said that. The inspiring stories, people out of the blue, and their lives are forever changed. Their speaking engagements forever. Mike Ruzioni from the hockey team in 1980, he said if that puck comes off, he scored the winning goal, 10 minutes to go against the Soviets. He said if the puck comes off the boards one way or the, you know, a little bit, an inch one way or the other, he's building bridges, he said. And now he's America's guest. He gives speeches and he plays in golf tournaments and he does some work for his alma mater, BU, Boston University. And his life changed forever because the puck moved one way versus another, you know. And so I think, you know, again, with Rulon Gardner, people like that, it's just it's terrific to see how their lives change and the inspirations they can be coming from obscurity. As for the Chinese, oh yeah, they are ready to beat the U.S. In the medal count. I, for one, have never been a fan of the medal count. I don't know about you guys. If the U.S. wins the medal count, and there's, by the way, there's the gold medal count, and then there's the overall, gold, silver, bronze. For me, I love my country more than anything, or almost anything, other than family, and you know, I guess that's pretty much it. And the notion that I would feel differently about my nation, U.S., I'd feel better about it if we win the medal count versus not. Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's nice, but to me, the Olympics are individual stories. And I understand you wear your nation, you come in, I love that. I mean, I'm all about the flags and the national anthems. But if we didn't count the medals and if we just felt like, hey, this is a great Olympics because the individual stories are there, your question about Rulon, I think that'd be fine too. But somewhere along the line, this got started and we're not stopping it. You know, it's not stopping it now. So I think that if the U.S., it's going to be close. And the U.S. and Canada, of course, there was a big battle in Vancouver because the Canadians really put money into it and cared so much, understandably, about performing so well in Vancouver. And so great little, you know, battle there. And so it's a sidelight, it's a sideshow to me. It's not the big news, but many places it will become the big news. Will the U.S. beat the Chinese? One last thought on this. Many of you, again, those of you who are a little bit on the, you know, remember the games in the 70s and the 80s. Remember how the U.S. and the Soviets really went at it. And then the East Germans, remember that tiny little country, but they focused all on swimming and track and field. They never had a basketball team because they knew 12 athletes would only get them one medal at the end versus 12 athletes in swimming or track and field could get them 30 medals. So and for there were times, go back and check this, it's interesting, that tiny little nation won the medal count in the 70s. And the Soviets were right there in the U.S., and you really had someone to hate, right? It was like Yankees, Red Sox, or Michigan, Ohio State, or Florida, Georgia, or Auburn, Alabama, right? I mean, whatever you're from, where you're from. And you really had this kind of great battle. So I'm now going to kind of contradict myself on the medal count because, you know, as an American kid, you wanted to beat the Soviets so bad, right? Because our countries were basically at war, the Cold War. And thankfully, that's over. And East Germany is no more. And it's Germany now, and they're our allies. So there's so many wonderful things about how the political landscape has changed. But there is something about sports where you do want to have a great rival. And I think the Olympics has been lacking in this area. And again, I'm not entirely saying that's so bad, but that U.S.-Soviet battle, you know, we didn't have it. Of course, it's gone now. And so the Chinese are certainly picking up the slack in that area. And I don't think we're ever going to want to beat the Chinese like we wanted to beat the Soviets, for those who remember those days. But I do think China is a very worthy foil and can probably get our blood boiling and going, our blood pressure up a little as American sports fans. And, you know, there's something positive in that in its own strange way, in a sports sense of loving rivalries. But having said that, if we didn't have a medal count, I'd be very pleased because to me it's about these individual athletes, these wonderful stories. And I think we're done, but I just want to say thank you to all of you, and come on up if you want to. Yeah. You want to talk? I know it's your turn.
I have one last question. How about them Nationals?
Oh,
Washington Nationals. That's my team.
Yes. Right. How about that?
Yeah,
we got some Nationals fans. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Anyone have a score? Have you been checking here? I know they're playing right now.
2-1.
2-1. Nats.
All right.
Because it was 1-0.
Are they for real?
I think they're for real.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna. If they win today, that's 50 games that they would have won. All-Star break. they're exciting, and baseball is back in a big way in D.C. I think it's going to be fascinating. Steven Strasburg has lost 3 games now in a row, which is unusual, and the Nats are winning without him. That's good for the Nats. They're going to shut down Strasburg at some point. I think 160 innings is what they're saying. Right. Just a fascinating thing to watch here, folks, if it happens. If the Nats are 5, 6, 7 games above 500, above leading the NL East at that point, if they're coasting into the playoffs, do you hold Strasburg back a little to have him in the in the playoffs, or can you do that? Because then you're totally out of a rhythm, right? And your whole pitching staff will be out of rhythm if you pitch him every other start. So, and you don't want to mess around with an arm. On the other hand, the reality is, how many times do you get a chance to get into this position? And with the Nats, they'll say, oh, we can do this next year, and the year after, and the year after. They said that about Dan Marino. He was in one Super Bowl. I covered that Super Bowl, '85, I think it was, in San Francisco, the Dolphins. Dan Marino never made it back to another Super Bowl. So I do think you err on the side of caution with Strasburg's arm. I understand that, and I agree with that. But there's going to be a lot of conversation about that come September, and you don't have your ace as you're maybe heading to the World Series. It's going to be fascinating to watch that.
It's going to be a fun ride. I want to thank Christine Brennan, USA Today sports columnist, for joining us today. And thank you for attending. Just a note for people, on July 28th is our next Inside Media. Our guest is going to be Greta Van Susteren from Fox News. So that should be an interesting program. We hope to see you all then, and enjoy the rest of your day at the museum. Thank you.